So now you're staring at a back row of Lego minifigures, and there is no camera. And the reason why there is no camera is because the next camera I'm going to talk about is the camera that I am actually filming this video on. This is the Nikon J1, the very first mirrorless camera that Nikon decided to come out with. And when it did come out, it wasn't very well received because the price was, well, very expensive. And the sensor was so small, it had a lot of people thinking that you cannot possibly get halfway decent quality out of a sensor that small and out of a camera that costs that much money. It was Ashton Kutcher's camera. But lo and behold, the Nikon J1 actually has good quality optics. Especially for something that at the time of this video, you can get this camera for, I've seen as low as about $219 with the kit lens, which just so happens to be this. I don't know where the rear lens cap is, but this is the kit lens for the Nikon J1. This is the 10 to 30 millimeter, I believe it's f3.5 to 5.6, I think, kit lens. Yep, VR. So it has vibration reduction inside of the lens, and these lenses are so small because the Nikon 1, you know, is also a pretty small camera. Not as small as something like the Pentax Q, but still pretty small. And the lenses are collapsible, so you press this little button, and then you can turn the lens. There we go. And it just extends out like that, and then when you're done, you can just press the button again. There we go. I haven't used this lens in a while, so I kind of forgot how it works. Yeah, and it just collapses right back down into that. So yeah, when this camera first came out, you know, I can totally understand if something like this was $500-600, something like that. I would not be too thrilled with it either. I would think that it costs too much. But these days, if you're looking for a mirrorless camera, something that can give you better quality than a lot of the point and shoots out there, for a price that is darn near under $200 with a kit lens, it's a good deal. Maybe it wasn't back in the day, but it is now. So I'm going to show some pictures of the Nikon 1 now and just say a couple of things that I don't like about it, but at the time when I got it, it was good enough. It's really just all about the controls. It's a very simple camera. Nikon made it simple as far as the controls go. You have this command dial on the back of the camera that just gives you access to the video mode, the photo mode, this really kind of gimmicky sort of, they're not like GIFs, but you know, it kind of just it takes a picture before you press the shutter and after you take the picture, and then it kind of pushes them together and it plays some music in between them. It's not that great. And yeah, there are no modes for things like switching easily into shutter priority, aperture priority, a program mode, or a full manual mode. You always have to go into the menus in order to get that stuff done. But you do have a dial on the back where you can access your exposure compensation and set your timer, and your flash, and exposure lock, and autofocus lock. But you know, going through the menus, it does take more time than it would when you're just flicking through. And to people who, you know, just not really as knowledgeable about photography, or someone who just wants to get out of point and shoot land and start learning more about how to get the photos that, you know, they really want to get, it may be fine at first. But for more experienced people, want access to things at their fingertips. So Nikon J1 is still a good camera. Okay, so you saw the 10 to 30 millimeter lens, the kit lens that came with the Nikon J1, and now here is the telephoto lens. This is the 30 to 110. Now, because this is a crop sensor we're talking about with a 2.7 crop factor, and that basically means is that the sensor on the camera is so small it quite literally crops into the picture as if you were cropping it in some type of photo editing software. So compared to a full frame camera or a 35mm film camera, which is considered, you know, full frame, this lens is equivalent to about, when you round it up, about 80 to 300, which is a pretty, you know, it's a pretty decent reach, I suppose. Most telephotos, you know, you get 70 to 200, so 80 to 300 is still within that range. But, you know, even for telephoto lens, it's quite small. You can take this has a lens hood on it, and just take that off, and you can see how big that is. And then there's the kit lens right next to it. And if I were to stick the lens hood on the kit lens, they roughly become somewhat of the same size. So yeah, when I first got this lens, I went to the zoo, and I only brought the kit lens. And after I came back, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna need something with a little more reach. And yeah, this is a good lens. Also has VR, which is very appropriate because it is a telephoto lens, and it also wasn't expensive. This lens here I got for $99. Now I think it was refurbished, but as far as lenses go, $99 for a telephoto lens is cheap, especially the first party telephoto lens. The kit lens, this 10 to 30, you can get that for about $60. And then the lens that I am currently recording this video on is the 18.5mm f1.8, which is basically the 50mm equivalent on this type of camera. It's a great lens. I'm shooting right now at f2.2. If I wanted to, I can back it down to f1.8, see things got a little bit brighter, or I can stop it down. Right now I'm at f5.6, things get darker. So I'm going to bring the exposure back up to 2.5. Yeah, it looks fine to me. And, you know, this is cool because this is something that not even my other camera, and I'm going to show the D7000, can't even do that. Cannot change the aperture while you are recording video. Another thing that I really like about this camera is the video recording. In my opinion, better than the D7000. You know, the D7000 is a sort of a mid-tier consumer DSLR that is far more expensive, but much like a lot of other DSLRs, automatic focusing while recording a video is terrible because you can hear the lens going zzz, 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 and it's just not good. But the great thing about the Nikon 1, smooth transitions. You know, I put that right there, it's sort of focusing on the kit lens. I remove it, smooth transition into the telephoto lens. This is just absolutely fantastic. Great video. And yeah, this camera, if you're not going to be taking it out, just sort of use it as a small camera to take stills on, use it as a video camera. It's good. And for something that's you can find for almost under $200, thumbs up. Smooth transition. The Nikon D7000. The biggest camera that I own, the most expensive camera that I own, and the camera that I'm likely to keep for much longer than any other before I dare consider a replacement. Because this is the type of camera for me, this is something that I don't think I will outgrow anytime soon. I still have a whole lot to learn, and the majority of things within the menus and everything, I don't even work. You know, I don't work it. Some things I have no idea what it does, some things I just don't use. There's a whole lot to learn with a camera like this, and you know, with the wide array of lenses you can put on it, the quality, the picture quality is good. I just don't see myself replacing it. don't want to go full frame unless it's completely necessary. And I do not do this to make money. So it's not like I can say, well, it's cost effective. No, because it's not. I would just be getting full frame for the sake of getting full frame. And I don't think it's worth making that move until you really learned enough to want to make that switch over. There's a whole lot of black, so the camera says it's underexposed, but I don't think it is. Anyway, this big Goliath of a lens that I have strapped on this camera is an older Nikon 70 to 210 focus, 70 to 210 f4 to f5.6 lens. So the reason why I got this old telephoto lens, it's a push-pull by the way, push and pull telephoto lens, is because I heard so many good things about it. You know, I heard that, yeah, even though this is a good lens and it's not that fast, or, you know, it's a good lens, it's not that fast, but the quality was good. My choice was between either this or I believe it was another similar lens, but it was slightly faster. Same optics, but the focus was a little bit faster. And then there was also another similar telephoto lens that had a constant f4 aperture. But I ended up going with f4 to f5.6 because you can stay at f4 maybe until around, maybe like somewhere around 80 millimeters, and then it bumps it up to 4.5, and then beyond that it goes to 5.6 at the very least. And I like this lens. It's big, it's old, but it looks nice. Like, it's very grippy, you know. Nice little grip on the focus ring right there, and nice little grip right here so you can do your push-pull action. It's an old lens, but, you know, nice and reliable. Now, the other cool thing I like about the D7000, which I took into consideration before I bought it, was that it can support AF lenses. So that means that lenses, well, you know, it's two different types of, there's more than two different types of lenses. But what I was considering was you have AFS lenses, which has the focus motor inside the lens, and then AF lenses, which requires your camera to have a focus motor built into its body. So it's because the D7000 has a focus motor built into its body, it can take AF lenses and still focus. But on something like the D3200, 3100, 5100, 5200, maybe even the 5300. I'm not 100% positive, but I wouldn't be surprised also on the 5300 that you wouldn't be able to autofocus on this lens. And older lenses like this, it would just be manual focus all the time. And I also really appreciate the amount of control that I have being able to change my ISO and my aperture just by flipping the front and the rear command dials, and I mean just menu system of this camera. You know, it can be so, I mean, there's so many things. This is just the shooting menu, you know. Then you got the custom settings menu and setup menu, and retouching menu, so much stuff. But you know, I really like the control that I can get with this camera. You know, I like the feel, nice grip. I don't have very large hands, but you know, I do like this grip. And I think this camera, more than anyone that I have, has taught me more about photography than any of the others. It's because of this camera I started to really take raw shooting seriously, and learning more about you know, post-processing, and it's just really interesting. I mean, once you really like start getting into Lightroom and understanding how you can really bring out the best in photos, it's so hard for me to take a picture and just post it. You know, I'm just like, I have to take it into Lightroom. I have to let me raise the shadows just a little bit. Let me raise the shadows a little bit. It looks a little dark. Let me just tweak the exposure, highlights. Bring the highlights down a little bit. It looks a little blown out. We're gonna bring down the highlights. Let me do some, you know, lens profile corrections. Get rid of that barrel distortion. You know, just stuff that I never would have thought of before, and now I just cannot. I can't function without it. Yeah, what else about this camera? You know, of course, bad things. I used to use this camera to record some videos on, but it was just too complicated. It wasn't complicated, but it was annoying for me. Because I'm the only one doing this. There's no one doing the focus for me. So I would have to set the manual focus and set the aperture and basically set parameters for myself to do not get closer than here and do not move far back from here, because then you will fall out of focus and the camera will not autofocus. So, I decided, I'm just going to stick with the Nikon 1 because the transitions are just they're so smooth. I can sit down and turn on face detection and it'll just lock me and keep me there. I don't have to fiddle around with manual focus. It's just easier when I'm just doing this by myself. If I was doing anything proper, some proper film stuff with this camera, it would be manual all the time and stuff, but for the little things that I do, I'm just going to stick with the Nikon 1 because I think it's pretty decent quality anyway. Alright, so that's enough of the body of the camera. And this is the very affordable prime lens for Nikon DX sensors, crop sensors like the D7000. This is the Nikon 35mm f1.8G lens. So what does that even mean? Well, basically, it means that this lens gives you field of view of a 50mm equivalent on a full frame camera. And that's pretty much the most natural field of view for the human eye. So because this is a prime lens, that means that it does not zoom in or out. It's just fixed at 35mm, which actually looks more like 50. This lens has a very plasticky construction to it, but it's still a very good lens. Very, very good. Wide open at f1.8, so you can get some you have a much better chance at taking pictures in low light. I got this from Best Buy, and this lens sells brand new for about $186. That's what I got this for, which still, as far as lenses go, a nice fast prime lens that's actually a pretty good quality, that is a very affordable price, also comes with the lens hood, and of course it doesn't have any VR because it's a fast prime lens. One of the things that I like about this is that even though you have the toggles for manual focus and autofocus, you don't have to unlock it whenever you want to manual focus, because this focus ring here can override autofocus at any time. On some of my other lenses, whenever you want to focus manually, you always have to make sure that you flip the switch on the lens or flip the switch on the body of the camera in order to enable the manual focus. But on this, you autofocus on something, you're not quite liking it, the camera doesn't quite see what you want to see as far as focus is concerned, and then you just slide this here ring and everything will be okay. So if you have a crop sensor camera like the D7000, then this is definitely one of the lenses that you should get for it, because it's a good walking around lens. In some situations, 50mm can be a bit tight. I remember I was trying to take a picture of a Coca-Cola truck or a Coca-Cola vehicle, an old-timey Coca-Cola vehicle, and I had this lens on, but it was too close and I couldn't back up. I couldn't get the entire picture in. I couldn't get the entire vehicle in frame. So this lens was a bit too tight for that. But for occasions when 50mm or 35mm, that's a 50mm equivalent, is just a little bit too close, you're going to need something wider. And that's what this next lens is. This lens has become my main walking around lens. It's a nice little mid-range zoom. This is the Tamron 17 to 50 f2.8. Constant 2.8 aperture, all the way from 17mm all the way over to 50mm. The proper name for this lens, it's a bit ridiculous. You see, it's Tamron AF 17 to 50mm f2.8 IF, and it's a bunch of other things on here too. Here you go, aspherical LDXR Di2SP. I don't know what that means. Just know that it is pretty good at the wide end at 17mm, which of course on a crop sensor, the actual field of view is a little bit tighter than that, but it's much wider than the 35mm lens. It allows you to see more of the environment in an unnatural way, because if you were standing out, let's say like in front of a house, and you took a picture with this lens at 17mm, you can get the front of the house, and then you can also see off into the neighbor's yard on either side. It's very wide. Well, not very wide, but it is a wide lens. It gives you a little bit more options for creativity, because if you come really close to something and you take a picture of it with this wide angle lens at the widest it can possibly get, it distorts. This is also, before I end up breaking it, this is the manual focus ring, which is not, you're not supposed to move it without unlocking it. So here's the manual focus switch. So you just flip that, and then that frees it up to be nice and smooth. And then also, you want to zoom. See, that's about how tall it gets, and zoom it back out. So anyway, like I was saying, with a lens like this, when you go and you take a picture of something at 17mm, or like the wide angle, and you get close to it, it distorts it. It makes things look longer. It can make people look, well, fatter, or it can elongate some of their features. And when it comes to portraits, it is not ideal. But when it comes to trying to be a little bit creative, like you get a car nice and close, and you just sort of want to exaggerate the car's features for the sake of creativity, this is the kind of lens that you can use for that. So yeah, this is definitely a good lens if you find yourself, just sort of walking about, and you want to have a little better zoom range. You want to be able to zoom in more on your subjects, but at the same time, you want to be able to have the ability to get more of the picture in the frame, as opposed to like a 50mm lens when things might be a little bit too close for comfort. So yeah, I really like this lens. This lens was about, I bought it for I forget, somewhere between $250 and $270, which, in general terms is a lot of money, but when it comes to a good lens, constant f2.8 aperture throughout the entire range, it's a pretty good deal. So this is Tamron, third-party manufacturer of lenses, but it still works great. Possibly on all other mounts besides the Nikon as well. So that's it. That's all of my cameras and all of my lenses that I have managed to collect thus far. And, I think photography is a really great hobby to have. It helps you look at your world in different ways. You see things all the time, and, you really don't pay too much attention to it. But when you get into photography, you get to look at things from different angles, and you start to get more creative about, this may seem like a very plain and boring subject when you just walk by it, but if you can capture it just right, it can really help make a really lasting memory. And it's also good for expressing yourself, good for freeing your mind. You go out, you might be having a hard day, stressing out about something. You take your camera, you go out, take pictures of whatever you find. People on the street, just everyday things. People watching is already pretty fun, but when you can capture those rare moments that we tend to not really think about too much, the person laughing on the phone, or you see this bird just sort of bathing in a puddle somewhere and it looks absolutely filthy. But if you got your camera there and you can take a good picture of it, it can really help to brighten up your day. So this video has gone on long enough. I want to thank you for sticking around for so long, and stay tuned for more videos, photography related and not photography related, because that's just what I do here. So until next time, I'm Jeremy, and thanks for watching.